Not now. Uh, and apart from those two questions, are there any other questions? Anyone? Any questions? For paperwork, don't worry. We can't force you for paperwork. And if and secondly, we'll tell you. Obviously, we are not going to expect you to do things which we don't tell you. I'll share certain sources also. And if anyone wants to be prepared beforehand, just go to the UNHRC website or UNHRC archives, and you will find tons of DRs, right? Draft resolutions, or you can just Google it, UNHRC draft resolution PDF, and you will get the format. So one, you can learn on your own beforehand, or you can wait for the committee to reach that point, and I will address it. Yes, UAE.
Point of inquiry.
Yes.
Is there going to be are there going to be closing statements or no?
I again never said that we will have closing statements for sure. I was like, if needed, we could have them. So for now, I would neither agree or deny. Let's see how the committee functions, right? Let's see. Maybe there is no need for them, because technically there is nothing as such as closing statements. Okay, in the procedure, what we are doing is to make it conducive and friendly for the first timers. So, but let's see what happens. And depending upon what we do in this session, I plan to take this session on till 1:30 at least, 1:32, so we can have a half an hour break and then again have a 2-hour session. So let's see, and I'll let you know then. There are a lot of ifs and buts currently based off things and how, and because of the time constraint also. So let's try to make best use of it. So with that, if there are no more questions, we'll get started then. Are there any questions? Great. Seeing none, we'll move forward. So what I wanted to do now is that we got done with the second moderated caucus yesterday, moderated session, which was then raised by Luxembourg. Great. So Leah, can you again please tell me what is the strength of the committee today? 18 or 20?
20.
20, right? So simple majority comes down to 11. The same logic, 50 plus 1. So are there any points on the floor? Yeah. Yes, we'll have the delegate of USA and then the delegate of India. Yeah, go ahead.
To raise the moderated caucus topic.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Motion to raise the moderated caucus topic.
Motion to suspend formal debate and start a moderated caucus discussing topic for total time and per speaker time. Raise it like that.
Motion to suspend formal debate and to raise a motion to raise a topic to start a moderated caucus
discussing
the moderated caucus topic, that is to eradicate strategies to eradicate custodial violence.
Okay, strategies to eradicate custodial. Okay. And what timings?
20 minutes, 2 minutes per speaker time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, delegate of USA. Delegate of India.
Delegate of India wants to suspend the formal debate and enter into a moderated caucus with the topic in and around the nation. Should freedom of expression be accompanied by certain restriction, or should no restriction be imposed, with total time being 20 minutes and per speaker time being 2 minutes?
So I'll repeat it. In and around nations, should freedom of speech and expression be accompanied with certain restrictions, right?
Or should no restrictions be imposed?
Okay. So we'll keep it this only. In and around nations, should freedom of speech and expression be accompanied with certain restrictions? It is all obviously given. Who don't agree with it will speak about no restrictions. So just give me a minute. you have again 20 and 2, right?
Yes, sir.
Leah, can you please send both these motions with the timings on the chat box? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Just do it so everyone knows while they are voting. Yeah. So delegates, we have two motions on the floor. First one being strategies to eradicate custodial violence for total time 20 minutes, per speaker time 2 minutes, raised by the delegate of USA. Next, we have a motion raised by the delegate of India discussing in and around nations should freedom of speech and expression be accompanied with certain restrictions. Again, the total time being 20 minutes and per speaker time being 2 minutes. So first we'll be in the order of introduction. We'll be voting upon the motion raised by the delegate of USA. So all those in favor to have a moderated session discussing strategies to eradicate custodial violence for the next 20 minutes, for per speaker 2 minutes, please raise your hands. All those for. Drishik, just count, okay? Yeah. All those for 5 more seconds, and then we move ahead to against. All those against, for, please put your hands down. All those against. So we are, so USA, you are against. Yeah. Okay.
Sir, sorry to interrupt, but some delegate is voting twice.
Yes, because we had 17 and 4, right?
Yes, sir.
Delegates, you can't vote for both for and against. Please take a note of that. And as Drishik has pointed it out, we'll be doing it again. All those for, please vote now again. All those for. Yeah. We'll wait for 10 more seconds and then no votes will be taken into consideration. All those for, we have 16 participants for. Now, all those against. Delegates, 2 members, 1 member is not voting. Delegate of Libya, did you vote?
Yes, I voted for.
Okay. Delegate, this is actually not appreciated, but this motion clearly does passes. So we are in a moderated session discussing strategies to eradicate custodial violence for the next 20 minutes. Yeah. So just give us a minute and we'll recognize the speakers. Drishik, please add the details in the moderated session sheet.
Yes.
Delegates wishing to speak in this moderated session, please raise your hand. Yeah, so we'll be having 10 speakers. Yeah, so we'll start with Republic of Korea. Once your name is called out, please put your hand up. Then we have Nepal, Qatar, India, Luxembourg, Netherlands, put your hand down. USA, UAE, Libya, Somalia. So you added Somalia, right? Yes. So considering few, first of all, Mr. Soham, can you please rename yourself? We really want to just see your portfolio over here and not your actual name. So even I'll do it for you. So considering 4 more delegates want to speak on the executive board's discretion, I'll be entertaining 4 more speakers. So please add Argentina, Brazil, Honduras, and Mexico in it.
Hello, is this about the topic that Delegate of India declared, or is it for the
USA.
Okay, thank you.
So we have added Argentina, Brazil, Honduras, and there's one more, right?
Mexico.
Mexico, yeah, Mexico. Please add that in the sheet. So see, delegates, first thing that it's not always compulsory to have 20 minutes and 2, right? Be accommodative of what your committee demands and needs. It can be 15 and 1 also, so 15 people get. It can be, 20 and 1 also, so 20 people get. And even with 2 minutes per person, you can still have more combinations, like 2 and 30, so 15 people get. So try to be more accommodative, because we already have less time, and then when people don't get chance to speak, it is really not fair, honestly, right? So thus I did this once. Technically I shouldn't be doing this, but be accommodative next time. Yes, delegate of Korea, what point?
The point of parliamentary point of inquiry. Yeah. Sir, can we raise a motion of extension after this end?
We don't have motions of extension. Yeah, thank you. So with that, we'll get started with the Republic of Korea. So you have the floor for next 2 minutes. Gaurav, start the timer.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, the strategies to curb the custodial, I would explain the strategies to curb the custodial violence in 4 parts. The first one being the need to improve the right, or to need to increase the awareness about the right against self-incrimination. Many a times in custody, when we speak of custodial violence, the right to self-incrimination comes as a supporting part. When a particular person is provided with the right to not give a statement against himself, the right against self-incrimination, then he himself has a weapon or tool with himself to protect his own dignity in the courts. The second part being the duration period of custody according to various laws. Now, each and every country has various laws according to which there is differing duration. Yeah, there is differing duration of the custody to which a person is granted. The custody to a person is granted. So if we have a minimal custody with regards to different laws, then we can curb this menace of custodial violence more and more. Also, this duration part brings us back to discussion about how harsh, if there should be any more harsh laws or not.
Sorry to interrupt. We have a point of personal privilege. So the delegate of United Arab Emirates says that delegate, please speak slightly louder. Is not able to hear you. So please.
Sir, I'm speaking through my earphone.
Yeah, we are able to hear. Maybe delegate is facing certain issues. So just continue from here only, but speak slightly louder.
Sir, please grant me 10 seconds.
Yeah. Just Gaurav, add 10 seconds to the timer. 40 seconds kar do. Yeah, please start.
Okay, yes. This brings us back to the discussion.
You can start. Stop you.
This brings us back to the discussion about harsh laws prevalent in the country. The third part being the protection for witnesses. In South Korea, Honorable Chairperson, we have the Crime Victim Protection Act, but in various countries this act does not is not in existence. It is highly important that the witnesses should be given protection for the benefit for the sake of justice. The last and the fourth part being the signing or the ratification of the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment of Punishment. The delegate of South Korea, I express the request to each and every delegate present here to sign and ratify this treaty as soon as possible to curb this menace of custodial violence, which I've explained in 4 parts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, with that, moving ahead, delegate, do you wish to entertain any questions?
Yes, sir.
All those wishing to ask the delegate of South Korea questions, please raise your hands. Yeah, Drishik, the question sheet you manage, okay? For now, I'll do the scoring. So seeing no questions, we'll move. Okay, okay. Delegate of Luxembourg, great. Go ahead.
Thank you. So delegate of Korea mentioned about protection act that saves the victims from custodial violence in Korea. So how exactly does it protect a victim from custodial violence?
Uh, the delegate of Luxembourg, the Act about the Crime Victim Protection Act protects the witnesses in the courts. So if any witness is pressurized by the excessive use of executive in whether in custody or outside of the custody, then that particular delegate, that particular victim has a chance, is protected under this Crime Victim Protection Act. So it is for the witnesses and not for the victims of custodial violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up? Do we have
No.
any other questions? Yes, Brazil, go ahead.
The delegate of South Korea said that the protection measures would help to decrease custodial violence in South Korea, and they are requesting for every country to sign this treaty. But according to me, only one protection measure cannot help it to make the results quickly. So, are there any other measures that should be followed?
The delegate, I think I have been fairly eloquent in whatever measures which I think I've been fairly eloquent in the measures which each and every country should take forward in protecting the victims in this manners of custodial violence. I think I have explained it briefly in 4 parts. The first one being the right against self-incrimination. The second thing being regulating the duration of the custody, whether police or judicial. The third being the protection of witnesses, and the fourth being the ratification of this treaty. Also, I get your point that ratification of one treaty does not explicitly imply the sudden change or the sudden protection of human rights with regards to this violence, custodial violence. Yes, but I should also point out that there are around 18 human rights treaties which are prevalent in the which are active according to me, and the country of South Korea has been very active in ratifying those treaties. With already we have ratified for 14 to 16 of those treaties, and as I've mentioned before, we would request each and everybody to get actively sign and ratify those treaties.
Thank you. Moving ahead, delegate of Nepal, you have the floor for next 2 minutes.
All right. So, good morning, dear delegates. So today I'm Nepal, and I'm going to tell about the strategies to eradicate the custodial violence. So I'll start with a little bit of information. Morning on June 10, Sadha, a 23 young old Nepalian truck driver from Sabal municipality, died in the police custody in Dahandus district. It takes it back when he had turned himself into the police 2 years. Police hit him and killed a local woman, Sudhra Devi Shah, in a traffic accident. Also, not all the deaths in the police custody are due to police abuse and so on. Not that in my country, disputes over suicide or murder of girls turn spotlights on police practices, but there was a report on the district levels and nation media reporting over the 5 years from June 2015 to June 2020. So, in this case, I would like to say that the stable or firm governments silently in the politicals are approved directly in the leaders. If you know that the development has been decreased due to the government and the society commitment, and OAG is for the Office of Authority Generals has a role in the police, even not always proactive. In June 20, civilized society leaders were arrested while peaceful protests against politicals in for medical education. Now that 4 men on October died when security forces opened fire to inverted the protest in the Redhills district. I would like to end my state here.
Thank you. Delegate, would you like to enter any questions?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I cannot.
You cannot, right? Yeah. Thank you. Moving ahead, next we have the delegate of Qatar. You have the floor for next 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Very good morning to all my fellow delegates and the honorable members of the Chair. The delegate of Qatar would like to express his dissatisfaction at the committee members for failing to take note of the suggestions provided by the delegate in the previous discussion, which focused on preventing crime altogether rather than handling custodial violence in overcrowded prisons. Nonetheless, custodial violence mitigation strategies should include retraining existing staff rather than making gender specific prisons, which was a suggestion provided by the delegate of USA yesterday, along with similar strategies. Although different countries have different types of prison systems and different types of prisoners, there should be a coordinated effort on the part of the global community to share the best practices of each country when it comes to handling criminals and adopting certain pacification strategies, such as providing trained support animals, which usually consist of support dogs, to calm prisoners exhibiting high levels of anger and tendency to inflict violence. Thank you.
Okay, you're done.
Yes.
Thank you, delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
Yes.
All those wishing to ask the delegate of Qatar questions, please raise your hand. The delegate of USA, point of personal privilege, right? Yes.
Can the delegate of Qatar please repeat the point he raised against regarding the USA laws are implemented?
Can you
You
please
just said, repeat those words.
Can you please repeat it?
Yes, the delegate of Qatar was just saying that the delegate of USA had spoken about gender specific prisons and employing women staffers for female prisoners.
Yeah, thank you. So, your delegates wishing to ask questions, please raise your hands. Yeah, we have one question that is from the Republic of India.
Delegate, like you said about custodial violence, but just to recollect, in the last ILO meeting, you have replaced the Kapala system and given right to the migrant workers. But still, there are many discriminations in terms of some custodial violence too, in terms of trial, in terms of different methods of treating those migrant laborers, both in the custody of the judiciary, custody of police, and also especially the women and LGBTQ people. So can you just state how or what measures you are taking to correct them and how you have destroyed the Kapala system?
Point of privilege, what system is he referring to? I did not understand the specific word.
Repeat the question again clearly, please, delegate of India.
Sure, sir. Delegate, in the last ILO meeting, that is International Labour Organization, the Kapala system that Qatar used to practice was replaced, and it was given, some rights were given to migrant workers. But still reports shows that Kapala system is still existing, and majority of there's some discrimination against the migrant laborers, especially the women and LGBTQ people, in terms of both wages and their lifestyle, and also in the trial and custody of the police and judiciary. So can you just show some light on how you have corrected it or how you are going to correct it?
Thank you, Delegate of India. So you were correct. We have demolished the sponsorship system, which was previously in place. And just being in line with the agenda, there have been no incidents of custodial violence since 2015. And about the specifics of the sponsorship system, how we plan to abolish it, and what further steps we are taking to make the lives of migrant laborers better. The delegate of Qatar had already explained that Qatar had established a human rights commission. Qatar had given the right of laborers to sue their employers if there are any cases of labor mismanagement, etc. That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving ahead, we'll have the delegate of USA.
Delegate, before questioning my solution regarding the gender specific laws which I had implemented yesterday, for the solution.
One more thing, sorry, no personal pronouns.
Okay.
For the delegate. And you
That delegate of USA had implemented yesterday for the benefit of for the benefit of the women who are held in custody. But let me tell you, one more point that you had mentioned, that there have been no cases of custodial violence up to
You need to give
2015.
a question, not your statement. Do this in your speech. What is the
Okay.
question, delegate of USA?
Okay. My question is that there's an Article 38 of 2009 sponsorship law that provides arrest and 30-day detention of anyone, of any citizen of your country. However, according to the UN Special Rapporteur of 2021, reported that there has been detention cases that lasted up to a year. What is the stance of Delegate of Qatar on this?
Yes, respond.
This is a question, Chair.
Yeah, that is what delegate of USA said right now.
Okay, the delegate of Qatar chooses not to respond.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Delegate of Republic of Korea, you have a point or what?
Sir, a POI.
No, so only two POIs.
Okay.
Yeah. Drishik, you added the exclamation mark, right? Right now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. Moving ahead, next we have the delegate of India.
Very good morning to all the delegates and chair. In consideration to the custodial violence, we just need to understand first that what pointers and what are the issues that raise to custodial violence. In my country's view and our research work, we have come to the judgment that the following are the pointers: that is work pressure. The police in different countries and the officials that are involved in the judiciary methods have a great amount of work pressure to come up with the judgment or come up with the investigation, and that leads to the custodial violence. Various other points like greed of money, punitive violence, that positive reinforcement, police subculture, lack of proper training to the police methods, and the degree of methods which are dealt with them to train how to come up with the proper answer from the witness or the proper answer from the accused, and various other factors like lack of knowledge or application of specific things, political bureaucratic influence, and various other methods. So we in India have tried to eradicate it by having a human right code, which is very actively performing its role. Moreover, we have various other laws that can be under CRPC, IPC, that is under under Evidence Act, that is section 331 of IPC, 2526 of Indian Evidence Act, section 76 of CRPC, and section 29 of Police Act 1861. All those are present under the acts and laws of Indian government, which have enacted and curb the tendency of the police to resort to torture or extend to confession. Moreover, various other things like human rights code, human rights commission at both state and national level, legal aid, fast track courts, hygiene and sanitation is there, and CCTV in the prisons. Moreover, we have fundamental rights like Article 19, 20, and 21, which deals with the right of freedom, like some freedoms. And I request all the delegates to have a look upon it and follow as India have performed on their part.
Thank you, delegate. Delegate of Netherlands, you had a point. What?
Sorry, it was by mistake.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Thank you. Delegate of India, would you like to entertain any questions?
Yes, sir, sure.
All those wishing to ask Delegate of India questions, please raise your hands. So we'll have Somalia and Netherlands in that order. Delegate of Somalia, you can go ahead. You have been recognized. Somalia.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir. So, in India during lockdown, the people who were roaming outside the houses were beaten by the police in their custodies. Why did the Indian police use violence instead of some peaceful means of punishment?
Delegate, as stated, during the lockdown, there was a strict policies imposed by the government to maintain less and less COVID cases, to maintain a safe distance between the people, and to reduce the number of COVID cases that could come in future. In consideration to violence that has been imposed, there are many guidelines and issues that were already being stated before the citizen as to when and how and why they should not come out. Violence imposed, the strict action has been taken against the police officers who have done it if they have done on their arbitrary thinkings and on the and moreover there were no custodial violence in the custody of the police officer as there is no particular report on it.
Okay.
Yeah. You need a follow-up?
No, sir.
Thank you. Netherlands, go ahead.
Yes. So my question is, so the delegate of Netherlands would like to ask you that in last 2 decades, 1,888 custodial deaths have been reported across India, with 893 cases registered against police personnel, and just 26 policemen were convicted in this period as per official records. So you have a number of laws, but how about implementing them, or how do you implement them? Thank you.
So delegate, as we have different laws for different issues, moreover in consider to implementation, we have a proper judiciary method and proper authorities set up to implement it. We have a very follow-up and concluding investigation in consideration to these issues, and after these investigation we come up with a judgment that so and so number of police officers or so number of authorities and before the prison or before the arrest they have done. So our laws have been properly followed, and yeah, I respond.
You need to follow?
Yes.
Then ask
So
for it.
if your laws are being followed, then why only 26 policemen were convicted and we have no further official records of it, of the pending cases?
Delegate, there are some differences between custodial violence and the method of investigation. So in terms of custodial violence, only those number of police officers were being accused, and in terms of different violence that they have done to the accused, they might be violence. I'm not stating they might not be any violence which is done in the custody, but it might not be stated in the custodial violence as the proper definition is not being clarified. Proper definition is not being clarified under judgments as in other cases which are stated other than 26 police officers in the custody.
Thank you. Moving ahead, Delegate of Brazil, what point do you rise to?
I want to ask a question, can I?
No. So delegates, as I have mentioned it during the ROP session which I conducted, and even yesterday at times in the moderated sessions, we are only entertaining 2 questions maximum per speech. Those 3 questions rule was there during the opening statements. I don't want to entertain 3 questions over here, because then we'll keep on going on and we won't be able to cover, vast range of topics. So that's the 2 topic rule. Yeah. Moving ahead, we have Luxembourg. Before that, it's a sincere request, everyone please keep your cameras on, at least on day 2, right? Because if we were in an offline classroom or a room, we all would be in front of each other, so it's better to, at least while you give your speeches, keep your cameras on. Yeah. Luxembourg, over to you.
Thank you. Custodial violence is like a ban on justice. As said by Lord Acton, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is what is happening. The police is becoming the law breakers instead of law upholders. There is a need for democratic policing. Factors like corruption, which is a universal phenomenon, exercising extra constitutional authority, weak legal provisions, and ineffective implementations are the loopholes existing in the judicial and administrative system of numerous countries around the globe. Few solutions Luxembourg is putting forward are ensure applicability of the enacted laws as done by Luxembourg. Many a times the laws enacted may result in justice, but since it is not implemented, we see inequalities. A separate institution can be set up to act as a redressal mechanism and give justice to the victims of custodial violence. Spreading awareness and improving the moral fabric of society are important. It will make them aware of their rights to be used against arbitrary detention and violence, and a vigilant and aware citizenry will hold the authorities for their crime. Therefore, it will increase both external and internal authority for the internal and external accountability for authorities in power. The UN Convention Against Torture should not be only signed but also ratified, as done by Luxembourg. There are around 9 countries that have not still ratified this convention. Also, there should be criminalization of custodial violence. Protecting the witness from external pressure is also equally important. The countries having no laws should enact laws to protect the people from custodial violence, because when you have it in the law book, you desire to achieve it. There should be a system like raids. A government body should be made that would suddenly and without notice take a supervision of various institutions to hold the authorities accountable and catch the culprits red-handed in the types of perpetration of violence. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Points very well noted. Would you like to entertain any questions?
Yes.
All those wishing to ask Delegate of Luxembourg questions, please raise your hands. And please raise your hands at once. It's like I've seen this pattern that one person raises and we recognize them, then the second person. So I ask again, all those, okay, point of personal privilege, but raise your hands at once. Yes, USA.
Luxembourg, can you please repeat the last part
The
that you
point of
stated about?
personal privilege is addressed to me. Then I will address it to whoever it is. Please address it to me. Yeah, tell me.
Okay, there was a statement given by Luxembourg regarding the sudden action taken. Could the delegate of Luxembourg please repeat that point?
Could you please?
Sure. The delegate of Luxembourg mentioned that there should be a system like raids. A government body should be made that would suddenly and without notice take a supervision of various institutions to hold the authorities accountable and catch the culprits red-handed in times of perpetration of violence.
Okay, sure. So as we only have one question, Delegate of Brazil and Delegate of Qatar. Next time I will not entertain this. I asked once, you raise your hands at once. Delegate of Brazil, go ahead.
Yes, according to the last sentence of delegate of Luxembourg, the delegate of Luxembourg stated that supervisors might be appointed for the supervision of the custodial violence, but but according to me, I think that corruption might also affect the supervisors, and that may not lead to the great results. So, what is your point to prevent that corruption?
So thank you, Delegate of Brazil. I didn't mention appointment of a supervisor in the institution itself. Delegate of Luxembourg mentioned that a governmental body should be established that would suddenly, without any notice, show up and carry out a thorough investigation. It was also like a sort of, this process was also followed by the European Union. So a committee of European Union was sent in Luxembourg to keep a sudden check on the state-controlled institutions in Luxembourg, and there they noticed that there were 0 cases of custodial violence.
Okay.
Next, Delegate of Qatar.
Apologies, Chef, for that. The delegate of Luxembourg, the last point the delegate mentioned was of a system which suddenly checks up on well-established institutions in countries. So would that not infringe the sovereignty of nations? And if they catch incidents of custodial violence, would the measures be strictly, based on documents and suggestions, or would they be a bit more direct in the sense that supplying trained personnel or restructuring the prison management systems, something like that?
Thank you, Delegate of Qatar. So it was just a suggestion which any and every country would apply according to the various systems in its own country. So according to the various laws they have enacted for various purposes, its social system, its judicial system, its administrative system, every country would take a look and analyze all its system and then form a system for this purpose. Thank you.
Yeah, moving ahead, put your hands down. Next, we have the Delegate of Netherlands.
Honorable Chair, the delegate of Netherlands would like to state that persistently it is not the lack of effective mechanisms to zealously fortress the primordial human rights, but its condemnable implementation with efficacy. Among the multifold confronting barriers, that of constructive dissemination of awareness among the people from streamlined sector about their human rights, accused rights against self-incrimination coupled with legal aid deter them from taking appropriate legal recourse against any culpable executive authorities. Strict adherence to the guidelines laid down by the respective governments and stringent coercion action against negligent law enforcement officers who violate such safeguards are indispensable for ensuring the rule of law. The prevailing looming circumstances flag the need to espouse the recommendations of law commissions regarding amendments in the respective laws so to make erring police officers accountable for the abuse of law. An official policy needs to be adopted in order to protect human rights. The detainees must be made aware of their rights in detail. Proper reforms must be implemented to completely prohibit custodial and judicial violence. All the respective states should ratify the UN Convention Against Torture, as it will mandate a system review of the colonial methods, practices, and arrangements for the custody and treatment of persons subjected to arrest, detention, or imprisonment. Prison conditions must be in line with human rights requirements. Netherlands strongly oppose the custodial harassment and violence. Netherlands stands for the victim of custodial violence and promotes equal human rights for people of all states. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Points well noted. Moving ahead, would you like to entertain any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Next, we have the Delegate of USA. Start the timer, please.
Custodial death is one of the worst crimes in a civilized society governed by the rule of law. Does a citizen shed off his fundamental right to life the moment the police arrests him or her? Can the right to life of citizen to be put in abeyance of his or her arrest? The answer indeed has to be an emphatic no. Delegates, we need requisite solution for this adverse aggravating situation. First, suitable identification of all the officials on the person of the arrestor and arrestee should be taken into consideration. Sufficient education and training of the custodial employees is one of the main requisites. Preparation of arrest memo attested by a family member of the accused. Recording of injury of the accused in the inspection memo, if required by the accused, and signing of the memo by both parties. Providing all details of time and place of arrest. Medical examination of the arrestee under temporary custody once and every 2 days after the arrest by a trained doctor. Making it mandatory for the police to send copies of all relevant documents to local magistrate. Setting up CCTV cameras in all required areas of the prison or police station with audio available and keeping the track of records for at least a decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
Yes.
All those wishing to ask a Delegate of USA questions, please raise your hands. We'll have Republic of Korea and Luxembourg.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah.
Delegate of USA, do you think, since you mentioned about the protection of criminals and some aspects regarding criminals, do you think that there is any relation, whether inverse or direct, in proportions with the crime rate in a particular country and the cases of custodial violence in that particular country?
Can the delegate please rephrase the question?
Delegate, do you think that there is any relation, whether direct or inverse, in proportion to the crime rate in a particular country and the cases of custodial violence in that particular country?
Yeah, there is a relation, obviously. in the countries where there is a direct custodial violence, where there are a large number of custodial violence, stringent laws or at least basic human rights should be taken into consideration and implemented. Not even just making laws, but the correct implementation is also the most required in a whether it be a democratic, whether it be a republic or developed or developing country. The laws should be made and implementation must be the one main criteria that should be kept in record with the UNHRC. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Need to follow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Ma'am, yes, ma'am, I would ask this question once again. Do you think that if a particular crime, if the crime rate increases in that particular country, then it is quite natural for the condition of the prisoners to deteriorate in that country? Do you agree with this statement or not?
Yes, I do agree with this statement, but as we have set up this committee today to come up with great solutions so that these unjust tortures can be eradicated as soon as possible. That's why we have such things such as UN Convention Against Torture. We have certain laws which have been made, but we also need to focus on the solution of implementation. Thank you, Delegate.
Yeah, next question.
Thank you. So delegate of USA mentioned educational training of custodial officers. So what measures has USA taken to train these custodial officers in order to minimize the cases of custodial violence?
Well, the cases of custodial violence are there in US, but not as, but there have been laws that have been implemented to reduce the custodial violence. As far as your question about the training part, well, we already take those officials which are sufficiently educated. We keep a record of their qualification and training. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next, we have the delegate of UAE. You have the floor for next 2 minutes. Please start.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Chair, for letting the delegate of UAE speak. The delegate of UAE would like to say that if there is any abuse during the period of custody, the policeman would have an imprisonment for up to 3 years and a fine of 10,000 dirhams. This applies for the minority as well as women. There won't be any individual's fundamental rights are violated and they won't get their justice. Everyone in UAE have equal rights. The accused or the defendant must be kept in a safe place to prevent them from being tortured or physically abused. UAE, if the fundamental rights of an individual is violated, there shall be an imprisonment for up to 5 years if it is very severe. If not, there shall be a big fine which will teach the individual who has violated the fundamental rights to not do them again. We are trying our best to improve the condition of crime rates as well as custodial violence. To minimize the custodial violence cases, there are multiple laws which have been inaugurated by the government of UAE. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Also, one more thing for everyone. I see many of you have your real names next to your portfolios. We don't want to see your real names. So some of you don't have them. So if you have your real names against your portfolios, just remove them. We would just like to see your portfolios. Yeah. Moving ahead, next we have the delegate of Libya. You have the floor for next 2 minutes.
Yes, Honored Chair and my fellow delegates, I would like to talk about the strategies that the government could use to eradicate custodial violence. Okay, first, they should improve the condition in detention centers under their official control, especially with regard to healthcare. So there has been numerous cases of deaths in the custody, which should also be prioritized for investigation and prosecution, as a citizen has full right to live. To action to investigate allegations of torture were taken.
Delegate, sorry to interrupt. Sorry, apologies. We have a point of personal privilege. Yes, delegate of UAE. What
Can you
point?
please speak can you please speak a little softly?
Softly.
The voice is too loud.
Yeah, delegate, please try to speak softly.
Should I start again?
No,
Should I
start from here only.
continue?
Continue where you stopped.
So proper actions to investigate allegations of torture should be taken, and they should suspend the investigators who are torturing them until the investigation is complete. So it is important to take a stand in the establishment of a fair vetting and recruitment process to ensure that those suspects of involvement in human
Are you done, delegate?
I would like to talk about the strategies.
Talk about it.
I would like to talk about the strategies that have been adopted by the Libyan government. The Libyan authorities ensure the adequate safeguards against torture and other ill treatment that were taking place in line with Libyan law, as well as the standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners and other relevant international standards. Also, the Libyan authorities are trying their best to accelerate the building of the capacity of the judicial police, the military police, other law enforcement agencies who are the main cause of custodial violence. Thank you.
Thank you, delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to entertain any questions? Drushik, can you hear what? Yes, delegate, can you please be loud? Can you type yes or no in the chat box? No. Okay, thank you. Next, we have the delegate of Somalia. Somalia, are you here?
Yes, sir. Just 1 minute, sir. So, hello, can you see me?
Yes, start.
Yes. Good morning, my fellow delegates. Custodial violence primarily to violence. Custodial violence means primarily to the violence in police custody and judicial custody. The strategies to eradicate custodial violence is to implement more laws against it. If some officer still tries to commit violence against any prisoner, the officer should be there should be strong actions taken against the officer, which will put fear into the hearts of other officers who will try to commit the same crime. Somalia is strongly against custodial violence and is on the verge to implement more laws against the crime. The federal constitution of Somalia also protects the right of prisoners from custodial violence. Thank you.
You're done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you like to entertain any questions?
Yes, sir, of course.
All those wishing to ask the delegate of Somalia questions, please raise your hands. We'll have a question from the Russian Federation and we'll have a question from Honduras.
Okay, sir.
Everyone else put your hands down. USA, Republic of India. Yeah, please start, Russia.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask the delegate of Somalia, as he said, he thinks that there should be more laws to be implemented to eradicate custodial violence. I'd like to ask him what kind of laws does he think does he plan to implement to eradicate the custodial violence?
The delegate of Russian Federation, as I spoke in my speech, that more laws should be implemented against any custodial violence. So the officer who commits violence against any prisoner should be fined and should be jailed for at least 2 years, is my plan to implement these.
Okay. Next, we have Honduras.
Yes, sir. The delegate of Somalia, let me inform you that there have been 22 deaths of due to custodial violence recorded in Somalia since the beginning of 2022. So my question is, if Somalia is lacking implementations of the existing laws in Somalia, if there are any against custodial violence, how is it planning to make even more laws to bring the custodial violence rate down?
Uh, is it okay if I don't answer the question?
Yes, sir, that's your right.
Yes, I don't want to answer.
Okay, thank you. Republic of India, what point?
A point of parliamentary inquiry.
Yes.
Sir, as stated by you yesterday, we can only raise a hand after when you finish your statement of raising your hand. But like past few instances, many of the delegates just start raising their hand as you start speaking. So can we all do that?
I thought we all would do that, but since yesterday no one is changing. Now I'm not here to, be like, I'll like I tried doing that yesterday where certain delegates were raising their hands, but to be honest, I'm not selecting people on first come first serve basis. We have a list of how many questions every delegate has asked so far, so based on that we are selecting you. So don't worry, even if someone raises their hands first, they are not selected on those basis. But technically what India is saying should be followed. You raise your hands after you're asked to raise your hands. Thank you for bringing it up. Next, we have Argentina.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Argentina had taken steps to protect and advance the protection of rights and had advanced the setting up of the institution of ombudsman. At the institutional level and in terms of strengthening the legislative framework, the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights had become Ministry for Human Rights and Cultural Pluralism. The Truth and Justice Program and the Program for Victims of Violence were retained, and new units had been set up to address civic education, conflict resolution, and institutional violence. The Ombudsman, acting as National Human Rights Institution, had developed a monitoring program for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. The law to establish a torture prevention mechanism at national and local levels had been adopted in 2012. The way forward for prohibitions of custodial violence is that proper reforms must be implemented to completely prohibit custodial and judicial violence. All states should ratify to the UN Convention against Torture, as it will mandate a systematic review of the colonial methods, practices, and arrangements for the custody and treatment of persons subjected to arrest, detention, or imprisonment. The police officials must be trained under special guidelines so that any kind of violence can be prevented. Separate rooms with CCTV cameras installed must be set up in police stations for the purpose of interrogation. And lastly, prison conditions must be in line with human rights requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. Thank you, delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the delegate of Brazil.
Okay, so first of all, I'll give you what custodial violence simply refers to. It refers to violence committed against a person by a police authority or judicial authority. Now, speaking about Brazil, Brazil's custodial violence rate is very high. A reason why Brazil state prisons experience brutal riots so often is interfactional violence between drug trafficking organizations. Dramatic overcrowding and the dominance of drug trafficking groups make Brazil's more than 1,500 state prisons exceedingly dangerous. The national government has struggled to regain control of the penal system. One reason why making real progress has been so difficult is that Brazil's deep prisons mirror deeper structural injustices in society as a whole. To date, the national government's efforts have focused on separating the leaders of drug trafficking organizations from the rank and file. This includes transferring the most violent inmates, including those involved in recent riots in Altamira, from state to federal facilities. The national authorities have also undertaken a series of emergency measures in response to the latest massacre at Altamira. In the medium term, the national authorities recently announced that they would build the equivalent of 20,000 new cell spaces in state prisons by the end of 2019. Deepen has also offered proposals to try to tamp down prison violence. Corruption, I think, also affects custodial violence, as those who exercise political or high economical power can use their power against a victim without any good relation to them, and the corrupted police might accept the harsh work for the high money paid to do so. I also think that CCTV cameras should also be applied, should also be there in the prisons, and the CCTV footage should be visible in government offices so that it is supervised by the government officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
Yeah, sure.
All those wishing to ask the Delegate of Brazil questions, please raise your hands. We'll have Indonesia and United Arab Emirates.
Okay, can I go ahead?
Yes.
So, Brazil, delegate of Brazil, what kind of strategies do you plan to implement to avoid the custodial violence in Brazil?
Okay, so as you have asked the plans, according to me and the stats, the National Authority of Brazil has already starting implemented the plans. First is the national authorities have undertaken a series of emergency measures. That means that the medical faculty is always aware of what is going on in the prisons, and the checks of the prisoners is always undertaken weekly. And also in the medium terms, the national authorities recently announced that they would build the equivalent 20,000 new cell spaces in state prisons by the end of 2019. That means that the overcrowding in the prisons might be less, and therefore the diseases spread would also become less. And what I talked about the CCTV was we would put CCTV cameras in the prisons, and we would put the CCTVs in the government offices, by which that the government officials would always supervise what's the activity going on in the prisons. And we would also like to appoint those police officers only who are aware of the laws in the country, and also who are well educated. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Delegate. Next, we have UAE.
The delegate of Brazil mentioned that there would be CCTV cameras which would be placed in the government offices. But what if the government offices, I mean the employees, block the footage of the CCTV camera and continue the process of corruption?
For that, I also have a backup point that there must be a sting operation camera in the prisons that would also be connected to the government offices. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Moving ahead, we have the Delegate of Honduras. You have the floor for next 2 minutes. Sir, are you here?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, start.
Yes, yes, yes. Honorable chairs and fellow delegates, inhuman and reprehensible as it is, custodial violence is one of the most serious excesses committed by state officials against the civilians all around the globe. To extract confessions and sometimes simply to extract money, policemen torture the arrestees and at times torture them to death. There has been an alarming rise in custodial crimes, which has been roundly condemned and has evoked public outcry against the law enforcing agencies all around the world. Even if the police record the arrest and custody of a victim, a death in the police station is made to look like a suicide or accident, and the body is disposed of quickly with the connivance of the doctors. Records are manipulated to save the responsible police officers, and sometimes even local politicians join the conspiracy. The relatives and friends of victims are unable to seek justice because of fear, poverty, ignorance, and many other reasons. Also, also, right to life and personal liberty, which has been agreed as a fundamental right all around the world does not particularly or specifically express or say anything against custodial torture. So I believe we have strong legislation, but strong executive or implementation is lacking behind, and we need to work more on that thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Would you like to entertain any questions?
I am afraid I will not. Thank you.
Just say yes or no. No, why is
No,
everyone
no.
giving this big line of what they're just say
Sorry.
yes or no?
Apologies. No.
Huh. Next, we have the delegate of Mexico, the last speaker. You have the floor for next 2 minutes.
Good morning to fellow delegates and the committee. As a representative of Mexico, I would like to highlight that Mexico continues to be one of the most dangerous countries in the world to defend human rights and its own citizens. Attacks on defenders and journalists occur regularly, creating a worrisome environment of self-censorship and intimidation. What can be done about this is to rethink the current security strategy to develop an approach that takes seriously the security concerns and needs of local populations and communities living with violence on a daily basis. Rebuilding the social fabric and establishing social cohesion is essential in context of extreme
I'm
violence.
sorry, could you please be slightly louder?
Should
I'm
I
not able to.
restart?
No, just start from here, but be slightly louder.
Okay. Intensifying the reform process and strengthening institutional capacity, especially at the local level. Local police and prosecutors need the resources and support to be able to address the local threats posed. The fight against impunity and corruption and strengthening the justice system have to be the priorities. State capacity to investigate and prosecute crime is weak, so public officials need to overcome their reluctance to accept international assistance and cooperation. Crime prevention efforts should be targeted and prioritized. Funds for crime prevention are often used for political ends or quickly reduced when budgets are restrained. Maintain sustainable long-term funding for custodial violence and torture prevention programs is essential. A project contributing to the implementation of Mexico's new anti-torture laws on behalf of the German Federal Foreign Office is active in three areas, which is training for the federal police and two regional police forces, strengthening the civil society and creating special public prosecutor offices. The project also aims to improve coordination amongst the government agencies, both vertically between the federal and national levels and horizontally between participating institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we're done with this moderated session. Drishik and Leah, please, are you here first of all?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, update that list tally wala, because I think there are few countries which have not been updated yet after this third moderated session. Like Brazil has given 2 speeches so far, but only
Yes,
one.
sir. Let me check.
Please correct all that ASAP. So just give us 2 minutes, guys. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. We will take POIs. Brazil.
Yes.
No, I'm not talking. Sorry. No, I think Drishik, my bad. Brazil hasn't given any speech before this. Sorry.
Hello, excuse me.
I'm not. Just a minute, delegate. Yeah. So, delegate, would you wish to entertain any questions?
No.
No, right? Great. So, no questions. So, with that we're done with this moderated session. Delegates, now it's up to you whether we want to break for lunch now or we want to break for lunch later on. Because if we start another session now, it's going to take us a while. So,
hello, sir.
Yes.
I want to say that I have given 2 speeches, the opening speech and this speech.
We were not talking about the opening speech. Don't worry. So all those who want to break for lunch now, please raise your hands.
I'm sorry, sir. Can you repeat again?
All those who want to break for lunch now, raise your hands. Yeah, put your hands down as over 14 people want to break for lunch now. We'll be having our lunch break. Also, the OC is requesting that please fill the feedback form till then during your lunch break, which Ms. Bianca Chettiar has just shared right now on the chat box. Now,
Hello.
Now, as a committee, have a discussion during the lunch break, and once you come back, inform us that whether you want any sort of paperwork or no. If you want paperwork, we'll have a quick session on that, and I will explain, you guys how things are gonna go ahead. If not, we'll continue with this. In terms of till when do you have your lunch break? You have your lunch break till 1:40. Okay. Yeah, so we have a hand raised. Yes, Advocate Mohammed. Hello. Yeah, you guys can start discussing or, go off to lunch.
Sir, are you there?
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah. Sir, there were many delegates while we were discussing about the paperwork this morning. There were many delegates who felt that they need to do something different or they need to prepare more for writing a paperwork, and that's why they are finding the concept of paperwork a bit alienated or a bit difficult to follow up. So I think you should explain to them what should be included in the paperwork, even to me actually, so that we
First,
have a
have a
clear
discussion
idea.
if the committee wants to have the paperwork. See, if an individual or two people want to have a paperwork, then that paperwork will never get even introduced in the first place. So, बना के क्या करोगे फिर? So first have a discussion on that, and after your lunch break, let me know whether you want to have that paperwork or not. That's why 1:40. So between 1:40 to 2 o'clock, we'll quickly have this session. If you want to have a paperwork, we'll have a session on that.